You have a long history with Power Rangers, and you recently came back. Can you talk about returning to the fray?
Yeah, you know, I started the show on the pilot, which was 22 years ago, or more actually, and I was the production manager at that time, so I was doing the nuts and bolts of the show. I was driving the trucks and hiring and firing the crew and hiring equipment and finding locations, all that stuff. I had nothing to do with the creative side. Eventually, I started to write the scripts and started to direct. I was story editor for a couple seasons. And then at that point, I was really heavily involved in the creative side. So I went from nuts and bolts to creative. But this show is the first time, Dino Charge is the first time that I actually got to, from top to bottom, kind of be in charge of all the creative elements as well as the production. I oversee both departments now. And, you know, everybody thinks that if they could be anything, they'd be the Red Ranger or the Pink Ranger. But the secret is that the coolest job on the set is actually my job, because I get to do whatever I want. I can write an episode. I can direct an episode if I want to. I have no aspirations to star in an episode, but I guess I could. No, actually I couldn't. It'd be awful. But you know, I can write, I can direct, I can be in the editing suite. I could be talking to the composer. I can do whatever I want. And when I write, I can come up with any kind of a story I want. I mean, I really do have the best job.
It's a little freeing also, having done all the different jobs that you have over the years. Does it feel like it's easier to step into this role now, having done everything along the way, or do you think you could have, or would you take a different approach, knowing in the end you would be at the position you're at now?
No, I'm really glad that I took this approach, because when you start off as a production manager, you're aware of what things cost, of what's really feasible to be able to do. So when I write a script, I don't write something that is impossible. Now, I write some things that are really difficult, but I don't write things that are impossible, because I just know that if I ask the crew to do it, they might bend over backwards trying, but it's going to break the budget. At the same time, I don't want to write a script that's too simple. You know, I don't want everybody walking and talking all the time and then suddenly fighting. I want to balance things between, you know, the visual effects and fancy locations and bringing in day players to enrich the stories. And having had a past as a production manager allows me to kind of appreciate what I can do, what I can balance, while not overburdening the crew or the budget.
Awesome. Well, with Dino Charge, obviously you're going back to the roots with the dinosaur theme. How does it feel for you being able to sort of go back and maybe tie back a little bit to that legacy?
Well, you see, now remember, I was only the production manager when we did the original dinosaurs in Mighty Morphin. And so I really, I read the scripts, and I mostly read them for like how many locations and what kind of camera gear we needed and what extra crew we needed. It wasn't really about the theme. And then of course then in Dino Thunder I wasn't around for that one, so this is really my first dinosaur season, and it's actually kind of a cool thing that your first full season to be in charge is a dinosaur season, because I love dinosaurs. It's a very unifying theme. You know, the weapons have a dinosaur element, all the Zords have a dinosaur element, and it's very unified, and so it makes it simpler as a writer to be able to explain how things happen when there's a common theme. If things are very crazy and all over the board, it's much more difficult as a writer to tie it all together thematically. So I got really fortunate that the first one I'm in charge of is actually Dino Charge.
Now, typically we get 5 Rangers, 6th added. You said something about ease of being a writer. You're going to have 10 Rangers at some point by the end of the series. Is that correct?
Yes, that's true. And so you're right. So even though dinosaurs, for instance, makes it a more wonderful theme for me, the 10 Rangers makes it a real challenge. And I can't imagine whose crazy idea it was to have 10 Rangers in there. But you know what? It's the way it is. And so we look. One thing about Power Rangers is, the footage is simply something you have. And you can either see it as a limitation, which it kind of is from a certain perspective, or you can see it as, wow, a lot of the work's done for me. This has been figured out. It's like if someone said, write a song, and you'll say, well, what's the song about? And if I give you, just say write a song, it's difficult. If I give you the first few bars, suddenly you have something to go off of, and you can make up a song a lot easier. And it's the same thing here. The Japanese are brilliant at this. They come up with the various elements. They come up with a lot of the villains, for instance, and they hand them over to me. And now I can take some and leave some depending on how they work into the footage. But I don't have to create everything out of whole cloth. The Japanese have already done that. And they fit together for them, so somehow they can fit together for me. Sometimes I take a few of their little ideas. Sometimes I don't take any of them. it's really for me to kind of pick and choose which one would work best for our season and use those, and the rest of them I kind of just leave behind.
Is there anything that you were disappointed that you had to leave on the cutting room floor from the previous Japanese footage?
Japanese footage, this season we didn't have a lot of footage, and what happens is, okay, it's a more complicated question than you think. What we start off with is a script that we believe will be the correct length, which is like 21 and a half minutes. So we time it, and we do all kinds of things to figure out if it'll be 21 and a half minutes, and that includes the Japanese footage, which varies per episode, of course. So after we do the rough cut, and then the director comes in and he does a director's cut, and we're always a little bit long, somewhere between 2 minutes and 5 minutes long. Some episodes turn out to be even longer. So what you do is then I go in and I do the producer's cut, and I have to start to whittle down the story. Now, some of it is a blessing because I'm tightening the story. I'm making it even better. So the moments that you think the audience might be bored, you're tightening that stuff up, and it can really help the episode. But if the episode's too long, if you're talking like 5 or 7 minutes long, now you got to start cutting chunks, not just lines. And so you have to pull out whole scenes sometimes. So we'll often kind of start with trimming out the Japanese footage, because sometimes we can lose that without hurting the story itself. And then we have to start, after we cut some of the footage, then we have to cut down the story. And what I call it is, we want to get to the point where it's a good story, but we don't want to make it bleed. Because once you start to cut beyond what will still work as far as a complete arc, now you're making the story bleed. And luckily we did all 44 episodes this season, or these 2 seasons, without having anything bleed. So we had some long episodes, but we were able to trim them down so that all of them are just really tight, really good stories this time. And it's not hard. But as far as stuff that we had to leave on the cutting room floor, sometimes some Japanese footage goes on there that I just think, they had great effects or great stunts, and I didn't want to lose it. Not very often, but more often there's like a complete scene that maybe we shot for our episode that I just have to cut out because, it was funny or something, but it didn't progress the story. And when you get down to it, if you have time for something that's funny, you keep it. But as soon as the story, if you have to either give up story or give up something that's funny, you want to give up funny. You want to keep the story.
Well, we just spoke with the cast. They're a very energetic and comedic group. Is there anything in particular that surprised you during the writing process, or did you lean back in a different direction after having interacted with them as much as you guys have?
Well, after we cast them, we did a lot of callbacks, and we were very thorough this time to make sure that these guys could, because we had some very challenging parts, a lot of which you haven't even seen yet. But we had them come in one day and do an audition with 30 or 40 other candidates who had been called back to like the 5th callback or something. And we brought them in, and we mixed and matched on the couch, and they all wore colored T-shirts to pretend which ranger they might be. We wanted to see how they looked together, how they interacted, if there was a chemistry. And that one audition for all these people took about 10 hours. I mean, it was a whole day. And they started off as complete strangers sitting next to each other in chairs, like this. And at the end of the day, everybody was friends. It was really fantastic. And I heard from a lot of them that, it was like the best audition they ever had, because it was so enjoyable. And by the end, people are giving their best performances in the audition because they aren't nervous anymore. They've been there all day long. They come in, we're on a first name basis. It's our goal as producers we would love to have 5 people walk in, give them all a part, and we could all go home. So we want them to do the best that they possibly can. So they come in, we get to know them, we know their strengths, we know their weaknesses, we work on things to see what their true abilities are, and then we choose the cast. Once the cast is chosen, then we get to know them even better when we say, what can you do physically? What can you do? What talents do you have? For instance, can you sing? Can you dance? For instance, Yoshi from our season had some really great martial arts abilities. Brennan has some really great physical abilities. So we use those to try to heighten and make our episodes even better, because why not, right? If I want, for instance, somebody to be a skateboarder, why would I hire somebody who have to teach them for 2 years to be a skateboarder? If this kid already knows how to do flips and stuff, then let's try to utilize that. And we can do it when they're not in their ranger mode, when they're civilians. It makes it even better, right? It makes the stories even more realistic. So we do make some effort to try to incorporate the stuff that they already know as actors. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't with the characters we've developed. But in general, it's always useful to have a character or an actor who has a broad ability of different things he can do and bring to the screen.
Well, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it, and we're really excited to see what the rest of the season and the next season has in store for viewers.
I'll tell you a small story. Okay. So when we first got to New Zealand, I was sitting in my office and I got a call saying that the Rangers wanted to meet with me. They had some requests, and of course, as a producer, you're like, oh no, the cast, they want something already. So they all came in and they said, well, we just wanted to meet quickly because we were all thinking there's something that we would like to ask of you. And I just went, okay, guys, I'm really busy, but what is it? And they said, well, we want this to be the best season of all 22 seasons that have ever happened. So please let us know what we can do. And they just decided, on their own. They came to me and they told me, this is going to be it. This is going to be the best season. And it put a lot of pressure on me, like, oh gosh, because it doesn't matter what they decide. If the scripts are terrible, then they can have Oscar, award-winning performances, right? But if the scripts suck, then it doesn't matter what they do. So, luckily though, I had a couple of talented people I was working with in New Zealand, and I don't know how we do it, but we shoot 3 episodes in 2 weeks. So every 2 weeks we have to come up with 3 more episodes, and somehow we did it. And I think that your audience, I really hope that you guys, not only do you love the first 8 episodes, and everybody has liked them a lot, and I really appreciate that. But after this, we have a few episodes coming in the next 36 or so that we have left that I think are going to be, out of the 700 or 800 episodes we've done, they're going to be some of the best episodes that have ever been done in the franchise. And it's a tall order because we've done some good episodes through the years. But we did some really ambitious things that I've never done before, and we have some characters that I've never seen before, and that's saying a lot after all these seasons, right? So anyway, keep the feedback coming, keep the constructive criticism, and because we read it, we care about it, and I want to see what everybody thinks of this stuff that's coming up. It's going to be very exciting for me to see how everybody reacts.
Well, we're excited to have the opportunity to see what's coming up. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it. Stay tuned for more Power Rangers coverage at Comics Online.